and welcome to Just Onside. It's a bank holiday in the UK. I'm not sure whether it's a bank holiday over where you are, Ois, but how are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you. I forgot actually that it was a bank holiday in the UK, other than the fact over my left shoulder there's a game going on, which then reminded me 3 p.m. UK time for a game of football makes no sense. But then I remember, yes, bank holiday, Monday, May Day, and what have you. But I'm doing good. Ayub, our next holidays will be the second Eid, which is at the end of this month. So we should get a nice, juicy week off as public holidays. But yeah, I'm doing good, buddy. How was your Monday?
Yeah, not too bad. That game that's on over your shoulder, obviously that's it's half time at the moment, but that sort of Chelsea Forest game. I was hoping for a draw at worst. At best, I was hoping for a Chelsea win, but that's not going to happen, is it? It's just it's a bit similar to the Spurs Villa. But we'll touch upon that later on. There's one starting point, and it has to be the big game over the weekend. Certainly, in terms of a general football fan, it was Liverpool and Man United. Always draws a great deal of attention. Always draws a great deal of eyes on the game, and it didn't disappoint. I thought it was a cracking game, really enjoyable, entertaining. Uh, Two managers sort of at different ends. One obviously making a real good case to stay in the job. Another one, he's been struggling for a long, long time, but by all accounts, he's going to stay. But so that's really what I'm going to focus on, rather than just the game itself. Maybe you can touch upon the game, but really the incumbents at the moment, Carrick and Slot. Uh, if you beat as a Manchester United coach, you beat Liverpool. That's always going to give you a great deal of credit in the bank. So what's your thoughts on Carrick? How's he done? Because he did pick up Man United when there was a great deal of turmoil, both internally, externally. So your thoughts on each coach and whether Carrick deserves a chance at the permanent gig?
Yeah, absolutely, Ayub. And this was the discussion after the game as well. And you rightly pointed out, Ayub, if you're going to win a game at home to Liverpool, then that's really going to help your kind of credentials and opportunity to get the gig. Just very quickly on the game, I thought United probably in the end just deserved to win, probably off the back of that first half performance when they were very good. I thought Liverpool showed spurts in that first half, but United were, in terms of their kind of not just being clinical, but their ability to cut through Liverpool with vertical passes and with speed and transition, a real bugbear of Liverpool this season, was. I mean, they were probably well worthy of being in the lead as they were. And we could discuss the second goal. Maybe you'll touch on that briefly. But just in terms of the game overall, Ayub, I thought they probably just did enough after a crazy 15, 20-minute period in the second half to maybe just deserve the win. And a wonderful goal by Kobe Mainoo, who's had a few such moments. This was his first one at Old Trafford, if you remember that famous goal he scored away to Wolves in the dying embers at Molineux, which was a lovely goal as well. But yeah, he's really come to the fore, hasn't he, this season? I think he's just celebrating a new contract at Manchester United as well, which honestly is probably one of the biggest, I would argue, criticisms of Ruben Emery, the fact that he was frozen out and now he looks like such a critical player for Michael Carrick. It goes to show that there is room in the game for man management. Are you clearly? I mean, he's clearly playing well, but that's because Michael Carrick has shown him that he's important to this football team, and Kobe Mino has responded as you would want from a professional. So, yeah, listen, I think from a game perspective, United just deserve to win. Again, I would like you to just cover that handball. I'll give you my thoughts on the second goal. But just in terms of the way you framed the question, Ayub, I think this is the main upshot, isn't it? There was a big discussion after the game between on Sky Sports, Daniel Sturridge, Carrigan, Neville, Roy Keane, and what have you, with Dave Jones moderating about, okay, well, what does this mean for Michael Carrick? And it's always interesting because they go to Roy Keane first, don't they? Because of all of those comments that he made previously on the overlap and beyond, where he was quite critical of the appointment, got a little bit personal as well, which was, I think, quite unbecoming at the time. But ultimately, he was through gritted teeth suggesting as though, well, he's done a pretty decent job. And I think that's an understatement. And I think the challenging thing with caretaker appointments is that you have to be. I understand the merits of them because timing of these appointments are often in season. normally under very distressful situations. And normally you're looking, especially depending on the type of club you are, perhaps for a safe pair of hands to guide you through because some of your other major, let's say, targets are not available because they're either in a job or they're in a particular job, which means that they've got major ambitions for this season, which means they're not going to leave those particular roles. Maybe certain managers are coming out of contract. You've in the summer, you know that the certain national managers will have the World Cup and then may become available. So there's a lot of, I can understand in a sense, the idea of taking a caretaker manager, and that's a road that United have gone down multiple times, haven't they? With Van Nistelrooy, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at certain instances. The only thing I would say about this one is super interesting. He's done everything you can ask of him. He was asked to see if he could get Champions League football. He has. He's won an incredible amount of games, probably beyond even Manchester United fans' expectations. But he's got the team playing in a way that's a bit more in line for sure and consistent with United's style, ethos, identity, which is speed, having one player who's at the fulcrum of everything, which is what Bruno Fernandes has put forward this season. And they are a team that epitomizes, I think, what Manchester United fans crave, which is fast, exciting football, lots of running, lots of risk. I think is a word that I think Manchester United fans embrace. So I think it's more in line and in keeping with the style they have. The challenge you have with these caretaker appointments, however, is it's a lot about expectations and timing. And what I mean by that is he's done well this season. They've played the lowest amount of games that they ever have, 40 games they will play by the end of the season. That has a huge impact in terms of selection, in terms of lack of injuries, in terms of the ability to put forward a consistent side, work with the team throughout the week from a coaching perspective and all the rest of it. And he's got a great coach in Steve Holland there and others. But the challenge you then have is that if you then meet your objectives, it makes it a little bit difficult for the hierarchy and the board to go in a different direction because to land another appointment with the fans right now would be very difficult. And you can imagine now if he had finished the season, let's say fifth or sixth, won a few games, drew a few games, lost a few games, the clamour would be pretty much that, look, safe pair of hands, he's got us through to the end of the season, but let's now aim much higher in terms of pedigree and credentials. Now, he's done so well. He's going to be it's for the board. It's a case of, well, we like him. We never thought we'd like him to the extent where we were considering him a long-term appointment. They've been down this road before with Ole, where they opted to give him the role. So they will think, well, now to land another different appointment, it really does have to be the creme de la creme in terms of managers. And I think the only manager where Manchester United fans would wholeheartedly agree that they should part ways with Carrick at the end of the season would be Luis Enrique of PSG. I don't see another manager that would be, let's say, available, ready, and have the pedigree where the fans would be like, fair enough, irrespective of what Michael Carrick has done. This manager is of the ilk that you move heaven and earth to land him, if you can. That is. Now, Luis Enrique has obviously won Champions Leagues with multiple sides, may well win the Champions League again this season. His teams play a certain way. He embraces a certain philosophy. He is, by all intents and purposes, a Manchester United manager in terms of what they would like. But he's the only one that I can see that would have, I would argue, universal approval, Ayub. And that is, in a sense, because of Michael Carrick's success this season. So that makes it even more difficult for the board, even if there are some voices in terms of as a consensus where you may wish to go in a different direction. You're thinking now, well, again, how do we land this message with the fans? If they want to go for a manager, let's say like a Nagelsmann or others, there's still going to be some question marks to say, well, isn't it better in a sense that better the devil you know, so to speak? And Michael Carrick has done everything that you'd expect of him. He's a good press conference in terms of he's not going to say too much in terms of controversy. He doesn't make it all about himself. He understands the Manchester United way, and I think that is important. And I thought Jamie Carragher made a really interesting point about perhaps kicking the can down the road maybe another 12 months, because Man United, for the longest time, was subject to quite a lot of ridicule in terms of the standards that they had under the Fergie years. and the depths that to which they'd fallen, seasons without Champions League football, finishing 15th last year, obviously lost the Europa League final. His argument was maybe they just need another year of just stability, just this resurrection that's been ongoing. A lot of United fans will think, well, next season let's push for the Premier League title, and I think maybe that's a tad premature because of all the things I laid out, especially in terms of games. Now, the argument will be they're in the Champions League, so they'll be able to attract a better level of player. They'll be able to add to that squad depth, which means they'll have a better ability to handle the workload that will come their way. But I think you would agree, or even the most diehard fan would agree that playing 40 games in the season compared to maybe 60, 65 is a very different kettle of fish, especially when injuries inevitably will happen due to workload and just due to sheer bad luck. So, listen, I think he's going to get the job. I really do. I think he deserves to get the job as well. I imagine no promises were made to him, but I can't see another direction in which they go. I think he's a safe pair of hands. Gary Neville made the point rightly about how if Man City, some of these charges come to boot, or maybe even if Pep leaves, there's a few clubs up there in a bit of upheaval. Chelsea obviously playing right now over my left shoulder. They've got managerial issues. City might be looking for a new manager, although there's some talk about Enzo Maresca. Liverpool have got their own issues, which you'll, I'm sure, come on to. Maybe this is the time, and he used the word exploit, this opportunity. Is there a title to be won there? I think, again, he wasn't predicting it, but he was suggesting that this could be a very opportunistic appointment, let's say, to try and deliver a Premier League title in what is unique set of circumstances. So yeah, look, I think all in all, Ayub, I think he's done a wonderful job. I believe for Manchester United. I think he deserves to get the job. He couldn't have done anything more. And I think what's really nice, especially about himself, is it's no dramas. It's not a lot of arrogance. United fans love him. He was obviously a great player for them. And I think ultimately he will land this gig in the summer by way of perhaps a 2-year extension or something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to touch on. I think there was a key thing that you sort of mentioned about this season, that it's only, I think, 40 games, and that is, in my opinion, that's the cause for concern, because managing 40 games as opposed to 60 odd games that they would probably have if they're in all the other competitions is a very, very challenging task for any coach. He's had it quite easy because the expectations were quite low when he joined the club. It was in such an awful predicament that really, unless he got the club relegated, it really wouldn't have been so bad. So I think the pressure wasn't as intense. His remit probably was just try and sort of see if you can finish in the top half. A top 4 finish would be an absolute miracle. So he's done that. He's done everything that's been asked of him. The danger is, and you alluded to it, that if they do go for Carrick, has he got the aptitude and the ability to cope with a 60-odd game season? That's the concern, because it's very easy to get carried away. I think he's done everything that he can do, and it's almost made it impossible for the hierarchy at Man United to not give him the opportunity. Now, I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether it's something where they can sort of say, like, we're going to give you another year, which is, it's a little bit disrespectful. So in a sense, he has to be given a slightly longer tenure.
Yeah.
But it's an awkward one. As I said, it's probably a good problem to have.
Yeah.
But it's one where I don't think it's as easy as a lot of people just think, where they just give it to Carrick. He's done a great job, because this season will be very different to next season. Next season, the expectations are going to be far much higher. The pressure's going to be on Michael Carrick. As I said, this season, perhaps he's done the job with. There's always pressure, but not as intense as it will be next season. Has he got the capabilities and the skill set and the coaching acumen to be able to sort of cope with that? I'm not sure. I think the jury's out. I think he had a number of years at Middlesbrough, and he was well supported by Steve Gibson, the chairman of Middlesbrough. He had very good players, and he didn't deliver. I mean, it was about getting into the Premier League. He didn't deliver. So I still have reservations about whether Carrick is the right man, but it's almost made it impossible for them to give it to somebody else, unless, as you said, somebody like Enrique comes onto the market and who wants the job. Then I suppose it answers itself if that was the case. So on the point of Carrick, I think he'll get the job, but I'm still not sure whether he is the right man, purely because this season is going to be very different to next season. And talking about coaches, obviously, I sort of spoke about it at the start of the program. Slot, he's by all accounts, he's going to be the coach next season, which absolutely it sort of my mind boggles because I think he's been woeful this season. I think he there's been a great deal of regression at the club. And there's going to be obviously seismic changes as well. There's some players are going to leave. Obviously, Salah's going to leave. I've got a good feeling that Van Dijk may be sort of leaving as well. So there's a lot of issues, a lot of problems. A lot of the fan base want Slot out. So really, you when you lose the fans, it almost seems inevitable that the hierarchy will sort of bow to that pressure and appoint somebody else. But in this case, they seem to almost have doubled down and insisted that Slot will be the coach. So what's your take on that? Because I mean, performance yesterday, it was very sort of slapdash. It wasn't a very sort of confident inducing performance. And in the end, they deserved what they got, a defeat. So what's your take on Slot? And do you think he will be the coach next season?
Yeah, just before I go, Forest obviously leading 3-0, you much to
Yeah,
your
yeah. I mean,
chagrin.
yeah, yeah. Don't even go there. Don't even go
Don't
there.
even go there.
We'll talk about the relegation scrap at the end.
Yeah, I'll let you pick it up with your son as to how Chelsea have managed to put this performance forward. Ayub. Yeah, listen, Arne Slot, Ayub, it's been a difficult season, hasn't it? Ayub? Record defeats. I think that's 11 defeats in the league. I think 18, 19 overall. I think it's the most since God knows how long. Um, I think when we're assessing managers, especially at the top end, Ayub, it's as much as it is about results. This is a very unique set of circumstances, isn't it? He follows a legend, wins the Premier League in his first season in the Premier League, which is incredible. That has to win you a lot of equity and cachet. He's then had a very poor season, which therefore probably means that he heads into this third season, let's say next year. And I do believe, to answer your point, he will lead Liverpool into this third season. But he goes into that season with some question marks, doesn't he, Ayub? Now, it's a very interesting one. Liverpool won a Premier League title last season, 6 points adrift of Man United. Man United had a shocking season last year. Obviously, they're on the come up now. Yeah, fans, in terms of their preference and affinity for their managers, United would have a lot more affinity right now with Carrick than it would appear majority of Liverpool fans have with Slot. And that's the point I was making about Carrick, this idea of where you've come from, the journey, the expectations. So Arne Slot is probably a victim of his own success. Nobody would have begrudged him if he had a difficult opening season after following Jurgen Klopp, and then there were some shoots of progress. But actually, he set the bar incredibly high. Now, that's won him time. I think that's why he gets this season, and I think he should get uh, next season. But I guess ultimately it's a question for Liverpool. Liverpool can't be asking the question about, well, he's won us a title, so he deserves more time. The question you have to ask is, this is a transitional time for this squad. You mentioned rightly Ayub Salah's leaving. You said maybe Van Dijk's leaving. I think he'll stay. I think irrespective of whether he commits to signing a new contract, I think Liverpool can't afford to let him go, which means they have to then let him run down his contract. But it's a transitional time. Obviously, the tragic passing of Jota, Salah's leaving, Alisson's leaving, Van Dijk, to your point, who knows? Maybe the club decide to cash in if they don't think he's going to sign another 1 year deal, because they could still fetch a little bit of money for him. There's no doubt he's still a very, very good defender. But because of this ushering in of a new era, let's say, the argument Liverpool have, or the considerations Liverpool should have, is he the manager to take us forward in terms of this new era that we're about to embark on? That for me is the only question mark. Forget the title, forget this season to some extent. Are you seeing enough? Are you believing enough in this guy to lead you for the next 2 to 3 years? You can't be going into season 3 thinking, let's see how the first 10 games pan out. I don't think that's ever a good approach from a proper serious club. If you're a serious club with serious ambitions, you can't be giving 10-game trials, 12-game trials to see where this goes. I don't like that approach. It just means you're not all bought in terms of common goals and what have you. Listen, I think the jury's out, Ayub. I think it's a really difficult one. I think he's made mistakes. He's been unfortunate with injuries as well, let's be very clear. But he, alongside the board and the recruitment there with Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes, they've made major mistakes this season. They did a lot of things in the summer, which, of course, from a player perspective, we were lauding, especially a couple of key signings. But I think we all said actually that buying two what appeared to be number one strikers was probably a question mark, especially when you've got gaps in other areas, i.e., wingers, i.e., middle of the park, where they have become incredibly soft. For me, they're a soft team. They're a nice team, they're a cute team, but they're a soft team. We mentioned it at the time when they came to Ellen Road. If you remember, we had the same discussions that these got back into that game because Liverpool will always give you some opportunities here and there. So I think that's the issue that most fans have with Arne Slot. They're seeing a progression towards less pressing, less running, and more technical stuff, where the league, it seems to be steering more towards athleticism and power, especially in terms of physicality. And that's the question mark. Does he show us enough? Does he show Liverpool fans enough to show he can pivot? And some of their recruitment this summer, is absolutely crucial. I mean, think about some of the buys that they've had, and I was saying it right from the beginning. They've bought a set of fullbacks that they don't have confidence to play together. Now, Kirkes has improved massively in the second half of the season for me, offensively and defensively. He had a very shaky start, but he has improved. We must say that. But he doesn't feel confident enough to play him as a duo in terms of Kirkes and Frimpong. They're both diminutive. They're both better going forward. Leaves the team perhaps, well, not perhaps, but definitely more vulnerable in terms of their attacking profiles. Most teams tend to prefer to have one maybe that bombs on a little bit and one who's a bit more defensive minded to create a back three. Liverpool right now, they don't have the confidence, so they play Frimpong right wing. He's nowhere near good enough. That was one of the worst performances I've seen. And it's not necessarily his fault because he's a wing back by nature. May well be the position he plays for Netherlands in the World Cup, but he's not a winger by any stretch of the imagination. I thought he had a really, really poor game yesterday. Again, through no fault of his own, really. He's just not suited to play that way. Kirkes, I think, has improved. In the middle of the park, McAllister's having an absolute mare. I mean, to coin a phrase from yourself, it looks like his legs have gone. Now, he's going to play the World Cup in the summer, but he looks a yard short. Gravenberch looks nice, but nice isn't going to cut it. Szoboszlai's been great, but he's been great offensively, in terms of that all-around midfielder that you need. And then we'll come on to Wirtz shortly. But I think just in terms of the personnel that they've recruited, it seems a bit haphazard. The team doesn't look settled. And for me, like I said, the biggest issue is they just seem a little too easy to play against. And they don't have what I believe is that kind of defensive instincts as a team and as a mindset that today is about a clean sheet. Today we can't be defending numbers. We don't give the team any type of kind of opportunity. That was much different last season, where you saw them defending banks of four, but then had the ability to break out. Yes, you had Salah at the peak of his powers. You had other players at the peak of their powers. But he's transitioned them into a nice team, and nice isn't going to cut it. Nice isn't going to win you the league. And I think he does go into next season. I think he does keep his job. But I think he probably goes with a short leash, simply because I think the trend is that they've become too easy to play against, and you can't be winning titles if you're easy to play against. So yeah, I think huge question marks on a Slot. I just think he's going to survive because I think that's what Liverpool do. I don't think Liverpool would see themselves as parting ways with him, especially after he's won a title. But I think knowing how this works and knowing where the fans are, when the fans start to go, that's normally very difficult to recover because then the bar is set so high in terms of fans' expectations. So I think 10, 12 games next year, even though it's not the way I would approach it, I would rather bite the bullet. If you don't believe he's the right manager, you get rid of him. But if you believe he's the right one, you're going to have to see it out because you're going to buy players off the back of that. You're going to make key personnel decisions off the back of that. So that's why, for me, it's critical. And it's the same thing I always say about Arsenal. You've got to ask yourself, is Mikel Arteta the man to keep us competing at the very top end of the table? For me, he is, which is why I would back him through thick and thin, irrespective of how the season ends. But I think for Liverpool, they've got to ask themselves the same questions about Arne Slot for the next couple of years. He's not shown to have the answers this season, but perhaps he's earned that right, at least, to head into next season and correct some wrongs.
I mean, you said it's a Liverpool way. And Liverpool have always been a club where they're not trigger happy. But I've never known Liverpool fans as agitated, as annoyed, as angry towards a coach than they are now towards Slot. And I think with Slot as well. I mean, it's all. I suppose he's not doing himself any favors at all. Especially with this embracement of Liverpool as a city, because that's always been the case. That I think Liverpool is quite a unique football club. It's something that I've mentioned before. I think you've got to embrace everything that goes with Liverpool Football Club. And I just don't think Slot has. I think there's a great deal of arrogance, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think he somehow has never uh, taken responsibility. I think he's always sort of shifted the blame on something or something else or somebody else. And I think that never sort of warms an audience to you if you're always blaming somebody else. I think the football as well, and you're right, they've been very, very soft. I mean, we've not been beaten by them this season, which for a promoted club it's a damning sort of statement to make. And they've not been that good. They've not been that good at all. I mean, yesterday was a it was a good game to watch, but it was an indifferent performance from Liverpool. And I think deservedly, you were right. They didn't deserve anything from that game, even though they pulled it back to 2-2. I think the right team won in the end. I'm amazed. I'm absolutely amazed that given the feelings of the fans, given the way that Liverpool have played this season, given the way that some players, I mean, it doesn't seem that the players are completely engaged with everything that Slot is doing. Given all of that, I am surprised that the club have decided. I think it's pretty certain that they have decided to keep him on for at least another season. But it's going to get really toxic. If that start of the season is poor, it's going to get really, really toxic. And you're absolutely right. It's one of these where why wait? Because I don't know what they're expecting next season that's going to be different from this season. Because I don't think this coach has demonstrated anything to me this season. And I think last season was, maybe you can sort of say it was still Klopp's side. It was still Klopp's effect. So maybe that was one of the reasons why they were in decent form and they won the league. I think this season he's had the opportunity of a pre-season. He has been plagued with injuries to key men.
Yeah.
But that's the modern game. I mean, you have a squad for a reason. And this is Liverpool Football Club, and their performances, irrespective whether you factor in the injuries or not, has been underwhelming by a long, long way. So I'm surprised that they're going to continue with him, but I'm pretty certain that he's not going to last too much long in the next season, because I just can't see there being any improvement because of the quality of play that I've seen this year. And talking about obviously players and talking about the quality of play, I want to touch upon on one of their big signings, or at least big money signings. He's shown glimpses. I've got to be honest. He's shown glimpses of what he's capable of, and I still think he's a damn fine player. Florian Wirtz. He's divided opinions amongst not just Liverpool fans, against fans in general. But I think there is a super talented player there. He's obviously not demonstrated consistently the ability that he has. But what's your thoughts on Wirtz? Do you think he has the attributes? Because he is quite lightweight. But do you think he's got the attributes to be a success in the English Premier League and at Liverpool?
I do, Ayub. I do. A lot of scrutiny on Florian Wirtz right now, because you're right, he came for pretty big money and he was one of the best probably available midfielder in continental Europe. Obviously, Germany rates him incredibly highly. He should be playing a part for them in the World Cup this summer. He came to obviously Liverpool, difficult circumstances. Ayub signs for a club full of excitement, obviously different country, different club, won obviously the title at Leverkusen, what have you, but then comes in tragic passing of Jota. So that, I guess, upsets a little bit of the kind of equilibrium and the balance of the whole football club. So that's a very difficult set of circumstances to kind of walk into. You want to ingratiate yourself with your new colleagues and what have you, but that takes a little bit of time because the whole club's grieving. So I don't think that's an easy circumstance for you to just automatically come into. And he seems quite a shy and reserved young lad. He comes from a family with a lot of siblings and what have you. I think he's the youngest and what have you, but he seems quite a shy and reserved guy, or at least on the pitch it would appear so. But I think when you look at it closely, Ayub, I think there's two things that are happening here, in my opinion. I think it's the first season, and I think he's potential. I think if you've seen over the course of the season, he has actually steadily improved in terms of putting his personality on games. Now, I don't mean he's putting in world-class performances, far from it, but I think slowly but surely he's starting to put a little bit of that imprint of the class and the talent that he has. And he's still an incredibly young lad, so he's got plenty of years in the game to go. But I think he's coming to a team at that's not ultimately suited to his strengths. Now, if you're going to have a Florian Wirtz in the modern day game, which I think there is room for, no issues whatsoever. You saw Bayern Munich, for example, play with Jamal Musiala. They're kind of similar footballers in terms of quite diminutive. Musiala, both decent amount of trickery. The single biggest issue that they've got, you very simply, is that they don't have world-class central midfielders. They've got good central midfielders, but that's it. I'm not going to go beyond that. They got one amazing season out of Gravenberch, but I wouldn't call him world-class by any stretch of the imagination. McAllister's fallen off. Szoboszlai is, in some ways, what Wirtz should be, which is really taking the bull by the horns, offensive. But how many teams do you know you've in the modern day league that have two of those players in the same team? It doesn't really happen because neither of them are as defensive minded as you need to be to create some sort of structure and platform to play off. Now, the single biggest issue for me is not only do they not have protection for him, which means not necessarily do his running for him, because I think he does run. He's just not going to ever be speed lightning or anything like that. But they don't have any wingers keeping teams honest at the back in terms of having to keep defending the entire width of the pitch, but also having to worry about runs in behind. Can you imagine? Now, you put world-class wingers in, and this is where the league is going. This is where modern-day football is going. I've never understood this idea. There has been a little bit of rhetoric and narratives about Slot and how he's developing his teams and how Wirtz cannot play with wingers. It does not work. Modern day football, Ayub, when coaches are so well groomed in terms of how to set up their teams tactically, the first option is always how do we stop the opposition, as opposed to how can we then hurt the opposition. Teams are well drilled, Ayub. Teams, I think you mentioned on the last podcast about how clubs now have like hundreds of staff looking at various different data sets and all the rest of it, planning, scouting, all the rest. In all of that, you must have wingers who can keep defenses stretched in terms of the full width of the pitch, who can hug the touchline, hug the kind of byline, make vertical runs in behind, and that's going to free up all of that space that you'd expect a Wirtz to do in terms of that scheming in the middle of the park. Now, he doesn't have anybody out wide to keep defenses honest, so they're really keying in on him as defenses are. Centre-backs can step in. So I think as the team tends to take a step forward, as he continues to build a few relationships, I absolutely believe that he will come to the fore. I've seen enough to suggest that he's not being helped. Now, he has to obviously second season take ownership himself. I'd like to see a bit more shooting. I'd like to see a bit more arrogance. If you get half a yard, take a shot. Look at Szoboszlai. He doesn't need half a yard. He's constantly taking a pop because he feels confident if he's got the personality, the strength of character to take ownership. And I think that will come. He's a young boy who's come into a really huge football club. Some of these young lads have just this natural air of arrogance. I don't know if you saw Downman the other day, Ayub. Obviously, he's 16, very different age profile. But instead of passing where he should have passed, he's there trying to dribble the whole team on. Now, again, I'm not necessarily a biggest fan of stuff like that, but it does show that he just has this innate belief in his own abilities. And I think Florian Wirtz will need to develop that. They've bought him to make a difference. They've not necessarily bought him to fit in, if that makes sense. He's got to be the centerpiece of all that is great for Liverpool Football Club. So I've seen enough. And he came for big money. You don't pay money like that. And you can't be a German international and he's won stuff by Leverkusen without having something about you. I just think it's a difficult set of circumstances to come into. I think the team's not so good around him, so that's not been great. But I think as you start to see the team develop, let's say over the next 12 months, I think more and more, especially if you get the right personnel, you'll start to see him hopefully take that step forward about taking ownership on the football pitch. I've seen enough of Ayub. He runs everywhere. He's got some really nice technical brilliance about him. But he's playing in a team that's limited right now. Very limited. So that would be my depiction of him. Ayub, how do you see it? I mean, for sure you see the talent, but do you think he can succeed at Liverpool Football Club?
I think he will. I mean, there are sort of variables that need to be in play. And I think he does need sort of better players around him. But he is. I think he's a sensational player. I think and you're right. I think he's. I wouldn't sort of say he's got better as the season has gone on. I think he's improved but he still has bad games or ordinary games or average games. But certainly he's much improved from what he was at the start of the season. And it'll do him the world of good. I think he obviously in the summer he does. I think he does understand he'll need to get physically stronger.
Yes.
Not to say that's always important, because I mean I look at Silva, Bernardo Silva. I look at sort of the other Silva, David Silva, who used to be at Man City as well. So these are sort of diminutive and quite lightweight players, but they've had sensational careers in the Premier League as very attack-minded players, as creative players. But I think he'll obviously have an opportunity to reflect on the season. Now, it is the World Cup, so maybe perhaps it's going to be a truncated sort of summer. But I think it will do the world of good for him that he's had this type of sort of introduction into the Premier League. Hopefully, he's a strong enough character. I mean, I presume if you're a £100 million player and you've got to the levels that he has to have some mental strength. But I think he does need. He's one of these players. I mean, there are some players who can take the game by the scruff of the neck and dictate. I don't think he's quite that type of player. I think he does need good players around him. So if Liverpool do recruit well, and I think that's the way that you've got to look at it. You almost look at it from the point of view that, right, I'm not going to quite sort of say build a team around Wirtz, but you've got to look at players that will complement his style of play and then add them to this Liverpool player. Because I think if you can do that, he'll be a fantastic player. And I think what he can then do for Liverpool will certainly make them a much better side, a much more attractive side, and certainly a much more potent side. So I'm with you. I think he's a good player. He's not had the season that people expected, but it's a difficult. The Premier League is a difficult league for players to come. I mean, I am of the school of thought that if you are worth £100 million, you should be able to adapt quite quickly. But I think mitigating factors are that he's been playing in a very, very poor side, bereft of confidence, and there's a coach who just, I don't think, has got to grips with how this team should play and how I think the fans expect this club to play. But I think it'll be a much better player next season for all the experiences that he's had this season.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's a fair point. I think you have to allow him a little bit of time to settle. And it was interesting. Roy Keane spoke about, just very briefly, Luka Modric in terms of when he was speaking about Wirtz. And I think his point was, and he's right, I've heard a lot of former players, Jermaine Defoe, Gareth Bale, a few others as well, speak about how when Luka Modric first came, even Harry Redknapp spoke about it, where they played him off the left. They hardly used to pass to him because he felt like he was always kind of standing close to opponents' players. But when they realized that he could handle it and was an incredibly wonderfully efficient footballer, he then obviously went from strength to strength and obviously got his big money move to Real Madrid. And the rest is history. He's won a Ballon d'Or off the back of that as well. If he can reach anywhere near the heights of Luka Modric, he'll have had one hell of a career. Just very quickly, just before we move off that game, just super, super quickly, what did you make of that second goal and the Sesko goal? A bit of controversy. I just want to get your quick thoughts on it in terms of the decision making there, and just whether you thought the goal should have stood.
It's it's one where I don't even want to comment. It's just, you know what, is there any point? Is there any point? I mean, certainly mine is that I don't think it was, but I give up now.
You don't think it was a handball, or you don't think it was a goal?
Well, it was a handball, but I mean, it's sort of what's your thoughts?
If it's handball, it can't be a goal, are you? I mean, we're not talking interpretations.
Yeah,
it states very clearly that if it hits your hand and it goes into the back of the net, irrespective. It's a matter of fact.
But was it? I mean, it was a case of, was it clear? And
it was clear. It was clear, and I'll tell you why it was clear. Just very quickly, they showed that replay with the zoomed in lens about 20 minutes after the incident happened. I didn't need that.
Yeah.
I text my brothers, who are obviously Liverpool supporting fans. I didn't get a response. Don't expect to get a response at that time.
Yeah.
But I text them immediately after the goal that with the very first or second replay that I saw, the ball materially changes direction after it comes off his hand. Now, is it a small touch? Absolutely. Let me be very clear, you. Do I like goals disallowed for this kind of stuff? No. But the rules are very clear. It doesn't matter whether I like the rule, don't like the rule. I come back to Nunez's penalty, Matheus Nunes against Alisson. Was he ever going to get the ball, Matheus Nunes, when he got clobbered by Alisson? No, he was already on the byline. The
Mm.
ball had gone off. But those are the rules. A foul's a foul. Now, it's not a statement of interpretation. This is the point I'm making. There are some areas where it's a matter of interpretation and subjective elements come into it. And there's some which are just a statement of fact. This was a clear factual piece, which you could see on the second replay. I want to emphasize that. It wasn't the 20-minute replay they showed afterwards with the zoomed in circle saying, clearly it touched his hand. I saw it the second replay that the ball materially changes direction after it came off his hand. And it doesn't matter if it's a finger, if it's a palm, if it's a thumb, it hit his hand. Now, the argument today by Dermot Gallagher on RefWatch was, it was inconclusive. But you ask me, you tell me, I don't know if you saw the Mavropanos goal that was disallowed but for West Ham against Brentford at a crucial time. They were 1-0 down. Mavropanos went up the other end, got a goal from the set piece. It was disallowed. They checked frame after frame after frame after frame. There's no rule of if the offside is super tight, we'll just give it to the attacking team. This is something actually we would like, wouldn't it? That if it's that tight, you've said this many times, if it's that close where you've had to freeze frame, when does the ball leave the foot of the passing player? Okay, let's freeze frame it here. Is it his shoulder? Which part of his shoulder? Is it his... Okay, all of this, some of it is guesswork, but they go to pains where even if it's millimeters, they will disallow the goal, as it was in Mavropanos' case. So you can't have it both ways where you say, we'll try and absolutely drill down on whether you're offside or you're not offside. Remember the famous adage, you can't be a little bit pregnant. It's either offside or not offside. Similar, you can't be, it's only brushed his hand. It's not in the rules. You can't just make up your own rules when it comes to sport at the highest level. I'm not talking the grand scheme of the game. Again, Manchester United, I thought in the end deserved to win the game. But he hit his hand, and it was clear from the second replay, if the VAR was willing to look closely enough. I was here watching from my TV, and I looked closely enough and said, the ball you can clearly see changes direction after it hits his hand. You cannot say it's not conclusive. It's their only job, to check if the ball's hit his hand. And it was very clear. It was not needed that you had this zoomed in lens 20 minutes later saying, if we had this, surely we would have given this. No. You had the first replay that told me this, that it was a handball.
I've got to be honest. I mean, I have not seen the zoomed in, but when I watched it, I couldn't. I mean, they said it's a fingernail. I couldn't see, and I don't know how long. I mean, you obviously sort of said that you saw that deflection. I didn't, and I think I watched it with about 2 or 3 other people, and I don't think it was that obvious. But it's one of these where I don't know. I mean, do you have a snookometer? Is that what you need now? I just, as I said, decision was given. I mean, I just would like to revert back to let the refs make the decision, and then there is that. We talked about it last time. Now I'm not sure whether how quickly they would have been able to do this. If this was when we're talking about reviews, if this was reviewed, would it have been overturned? Did it look?
No, they're incompetent. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's incompetence, Ayub. All I'm saying is your only job is to clearly, and that's the point about handball. This happened to Kai Havertz 2 seasons ago at Villa Park. It was very inconclusive, but because it was given as handball, they didn't see any evidence to the contrary. This was clear to me. You'll see the ball flick because the ball has a certain number of rotations on it, and then as it goes past his hand, it changes a little bit of direction. It wasn't wind that forced the ball to change direction. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, it was clear and obvious to me. Clearly, these guys who were paid to do that job couldn't see that, and they were proven wrong. That's all I'm saying.
All right, okay. But I mean, it's one where I don't know. Maybe again, the technology is. I certainly didn't. I mean, I must confess, when I looked at it, I couldn't. I was trying to, and we've got it was on 4K as well, so it's as clear as it can be, but I couldn't sort of see the deflection. I'll have to sort of look at it again. But if I suppose what you're saying is, if the rule is if it hits the hand, it can't be given. But if it wasn't clear at the time the decision was made, then it's fair enough. A goal is perfectly legitimate to give because there wasn't something. But obviously, you're saying that it was. Yeah, right. Let's move on from that game. There's a game on behind over your shoulder, which is, I mean, I suppose for us, even though they were below us, and they are below us, I think they've obviously demonstrated that they are in absolutely no danger of getting relegated. But there are a couple of other sides, including Leeds as well, who I still think are in the mix. But there was a game yesterday that has
Mm,
brought a great deal of talking points. I mean, I was absolutely furious. I was absolutely livid. I mean, I must confess, I could have played for that Villa side, and I wouldn't have looked out of place. That's how poor they were. So this is something that's been it's not unique. This has happened before when teams maybe are focused on something else, and they've either played a very poor side or really not putting an effort. And it's about integrity. It's about sort of maybe I suppose it's respecting the league. Uh, so what's your take on that? The Villa performance? I thought it was insipid. I mean, in complete contrast to because I think Forest as well who've
mm.
made some changes in anticipation and preparation for Thursday, but you can't tell. You cannot tell that they've done that because they've made sure that that they're at it. Villa was just, I mean, that was probably the worst performance I've seen in many a year for a team that's supposedly in the Premier League. Go, take
Yeah,
it away.
yeah. It's well, first and foremost, it wasn't lost on me that you've relegated what is the most important storyline about the title race to the very end. But thank you very much. No issues. But the thing is, Leeds. This clearly got your goat a lot more. So fair enough. No, but you're right. You're right. Ayub. Listen, I think this is a very nuanced discussion. That's the first thing I would say. Now, you're right. Forest have also made a few changes behind my left shoulder. Clearly has affected them. But you could argue Chelsea are kind of in no man's land. Now, the argument will be that from a sporting integrity perspective, you could still maybe argue, well, hang on, Chelsea might not get Champions League, but they may still have been in the running for European football. And say a Brighton or a Bournemouth, it works different ways is all I'm kind of getting at. You can look at it a million ways. The discussion about yesterday was that with Aston Villa, this directly impacts what is quite a difficult area of the table in terms of that relegation battle.
Mm,
Game week 35 or whatever it is, and Villa are playing a team that's only won once in 2026. They're at home. I mentioned to you in the last couple of podcasts here that if Villa start to be a little bit comfortable in that Champions League spots, for sure Unai Emery is going to stop prioritising the Europa League semi-final. Now, he lost the first leg. He was irate afterwards at that Elliot Anderson tackle or slash foul on Ollie Watkins. So he's going to go all in for this second leg. And that's where it becomes a little bit difficult because they're playing a team that's absolutely fighting for their lives. Now, if you looked at the team that Villa put forward, and I'm not a huge fan of throwing statistics, well, they had X amount of international caps between and then this many appearances at the highest level. We can all justify a story where Tammy Abraham is a decent Premier League striker instead of having Ollie Watkins, but we all know what's going on here. Now, do I think Unai Emery, we can blame him? I don't really, because the fact of the matter is, Ayub, if you're going to keep asking for the Premier League is the best league in the world, which means that we get more spots in the Champions League. We get spots for the Europa League. FA Cup winner gets Europa League as well. You get more. Now there's a third competition, the Conference League, which is where Palace, and it shows you the strength that we've got. Arsenal fighting to get into the final of the Champions League on Tuesday night. You've got one Premier League club that will be representing the Premier League in the Europa League final, and there's a good chance Palace will be representing England and the Premier League in the Conference League. And that just gives you a bit of an idea that the fact that we are so good from a competition perspective that you're going to make it to the back end of all of these major competitions. So you're going to have at least one participant, maybe even two, and that can always then make rotation, let's say, depending on your position in the league, a very different animal. Now, you can think about, let's say, Bayern, PSG, and Atletico Madrid. All three benched their entire first 11s. Now, I'm sure they were playing teams that had certain things riding on it in terms of other teams looking at that game thinking, well, if PSG were playing these guys game week 10, or game week, you get the point I'm making. So some of it is
yeah.
just, I guess, chronology of fixtures and what have you. I would just say summarize it by saying this. Do I like it? I don't. Because I think it leaves a little bit of a unsavory taste in the mouth. I would have loved, in some ways, being naive as I am, and I'm not saying he should have done this, it's just a subjective assessment from my side. Somebody who just loves football. I would have loved Emery to say, well, hang on, there's a little bit about the integrity here as well. we've got to put our best foot forward. Now he would argue I'm paid to get results for Aston Villa Football Club. I've got them in the Champions League most likely, and I'm keeping both options open to get the Champions League, i.e. Europa League potentially. So now they're well rested. Now I know what you're going to be like. You'll be watching that game in midweek thinking if Forest beat them, I'm going to be having a right laugh because he's going to be like, there you go, it serves you right. Now that's fair enough, but he's keeping both options open for his paymasters and for his fans to keep an option open for the Champions League. It just leaves an unsavoury taste. And I don't agree with those who also say, well, the reason West Ham are in this situation is nothing to do with Villa not putting a good team out. They had 38 games themselves. Let's say sort this out. I'm like, fine. But you just expect, you take it for given, don't you, Ayub, that actually will be in an absolutely fair fight. And it won't just fall in terms of the lottery of the fixture draw, in terms of game week 35, the team that we play being, I mean, we spoke about the different mechanisms about, Villa could be playing Europa League final before they go to City on the final day. Arsenal play Palace the last game of the season. They might be playing the Europa Conference League. I think, is it 3 days after that, Ayub? So that's always in the kind of workings of what these, and Glasner will obviously want to kind of sign off in style, Ayub. So this is always in the workings, but you would just hope that some of these managers might opt for the other option. And how refreshing would it be in some ways? And I'm not saying you should do this, but how refreshing would it be if Unai Emery played a really good team and said, listen, not only do I think this gives me the best chance of winning today and winning in midweek against Forest, but there's something about the league that we have a right to put our best foot forward for our fans, but also for the integrity of the league to say, no, we're going to try and win this game of football because there's a lot riding on it overall in terms of, and that would be a lovely, refreshing approach. You're just not going to see it, not in football. So it's a difficult one. I think this gives him probably a better chance from a freshness perspective in midweek against Forest. Forest will be obviously still cock-a-hoop because they're winning games left and right at the moment. But I do understand why certain West Ham fans would look at it and think, well, I'm not saying they've thrown the game because I'm not going to go that far, but West Ham will be thinking Villa on any day of the week should not be losing and definitely should not be getting cast aside by Spurs like they were in that first half and for most of that game. I mean, Spurs could win a game of football, let's be very clear.
Yeah.
But Villa are much better than that, at least especially at home. I think they didn't have any touches in the box for the first 30, 35 minutes or something insane like that.
Yeah.
So, if I'm a West Ham fan, I'm pretty peeved, let's be very clear. And I still don't think it's fair to say to West Ham, well, you've got 38 games of your own to fix that. I think there is something about the integrity of the league that you'd think everyone's going to put their best foot forward. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case yesterday. It could have major, major ramifications on you right now, because I think if that game didn't go the way it could have for Spurs, or it did for Spurs, I think they would have probably still been favourites to go down. Right now, with West Ham playing Arsenal next week, you'd think right now the bookies would have West Ham as favourites to be relegated in that final spot.
Yeah, I mean, as a Leeds fan, I'm an eternal pessimist. So for me as well, it's very disappointing. I mean, the side itself. When I looked at the side, it wasn't. I mean, it's got a number of players in there that perhaps haven't got much game time, but there's certainly good players. But the attitude was it was woeful. I think it was an embarrassment. I mean, for the very first goal by Gallagher. I mean, Tammy Abrahams. I mean, he's almost sort of it's the worst pretend tackle I've ever seen in my life. So I mean, there is a part of me that is furious, but that's only because Leeds are in the relegation mix. If we were mid-table comfortably, I wouldn't have paid attention, and that really is it. It's because there's a vested interest. And you talked about the integrity. I've said to you, it's about pots. Ultimately, players and coaches will be judged on how many trophies they win. Emery's decided that the best way and the most effective way for him to have a chance of overturning that deficit against Forest is to make sure his players are rested. So I can't argue, because in a sense he's doing what I always encourage footballers and coaches to do, to try and win trophies. He is looking at the way that he identifies as the best way to win a trophy. So it is what it is. But it is hugely disappointing, because the Villa side that we played gave us nothing, didn't give us a quarter. I mean, if we'd have played that Villa side, we would have won with ease, because they just weren't trying at all. So there is that where you think you've been gifted 3 points, or Spurs have been gifted 3 points. but they were impressive. I must confess. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
as bad as Villa were, I think De Zerbi has made a massive impact already. And I said to a Spurs friend of mine that I can see Spurs winning every single game from now on in, and I think that will be the case. I think the next game they've got is a very easy game against Leeds, and I can't see us getting anything there, which was why it was so important that maybe they sort of drop points. So it's it, I think ultimately, uh, I I I can't disagree with what Emery did because of the underlying reasons why he's done that.
yeah.
Uh, so it's one where he's going to sort of want to win
Okay.
trophies. This
y-
is the way that he wants to win. This is the best way he can give himself a chance.
Yeah, can we settle on this maybe? I think we're both aligned. He didn't do anything wrong because his uh, main aim and objective is to do things in the best interests of Aston Villa Football Club. And if he
Yeah.
believes that was in the best interest of Aston Villa Football Club, he did not do anything wrong. Objectively, however, there is something to be said about just the league itself. Now, listen, I think the league has made its bed. It has to lie in it. You've got a strong league. You've got all these competitions. They pay a lot of money to all of these football clubs in terms of advancing, and all that brings a lot of revenue into the club, into the and all of that. So it's a big piece that we'd have to perhaps cover, which means all these clubs are going to go deep, and then tough decisions are having to be made. It's not lost on me that if Arsenal were a little bit ahead, let's say in the league, for example, and they had a big Champions League semi-final to come, and they were playing, let's say, home to Fulham, and let's say Fulham win the relegation team. Do I expect Arsenal to have rotated massively? Of course they would have. Their
Mm.
three other adversaries have done this exact same thing: PSG, Bayern Munich, and Atletico Madrid, which would have had some impact somewhere, some knock-on impact somewhere in their respective leads. So I think it just leaves, I won't say a bitter taste, but it just leaves you feeling a bit uncomfortable because I, for the life of me, know that if Aston Villa put their best 11 out there or as closest to their best available 11 out there, I don't think Tottenham Hotspur win that game of football. So I think some of
Mm.
it is just luck of the draw and chronology of
Yep.
fixtures and all the rest of it. But you are right to point out they did well and they played really well and they deserve to win the game of football.
Yeah.
But I think they got a little bit of luck along the way as well. I would
Yeah.
say with the
Yeah.
fixture situation.
Yeah. And as long as we don't go, as long as Leeds don't go down, yeah, I won't really care too much about this. But as I said, their victory just sort of keeps us in the mix. Right. There's a massive game, and it's huge now considering the results the Arsenal had over the weekend. Uh, uh, and it's I was going to say it's not a gimme. It's not a gimme. I mean, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I think there's going to be a huge amount of pressure on City, but as an Arsenal fan, I think you must be delighted the way they've reacted. I've got to be honest. I mean, that was Fulham sort of performance was that was awful as well. I mean, that was they weren't at the races, but this is Arsenal. I mean, there's another game Arsenal I want them to win, and that's the next game against West Ham. I hope they win that game. But about tonight, what do you think? Do you think City are? I mean, Do you think this is something that they revel in? The pressure. This is where I mean, we talk about pressure and how it sometimes it sort of freezes some people. But do you think this is the sort of thing that City will thrive on and Guardiola will thrive on?
Yeah, that's one of the great things about you, Ayub, in terms of how your kind of loyalties can change in a sense so quickly. If there's many adjectives that I'd use to describe you, self-serving would be probably quite high up the quite high up the list, I would say. I mean, this guy's been banging on about how he wants Guardiola to win the title. Then one result later, he's like, "You better beat the Hammers next week." Listen, yeah, listen, I would argue it was not argue, it was clearly Arsenal's best performance since probably Spurs away, Ayub. They've been quite insipid, you used that word earlier, it's a very good word. They've been quite poor in terms of attacking potency. We've spoken about it many times, but all of a sudden, I mean, that first half, Ayub, Fulham did well, good old Jeffrey Boycott, they did well to get zero. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the fact Arsenal were only 3-0 up was perhaps just the bare minimum in terms of what they deserved. I mean, there was the goal disallowed by Calafiori, rightly called offside, but there were many other instances where there Gyökeres had a save from Leno, a few attacking defensive, a few corner set piece situations as well. There were many situations where I thought Arsenal should have got another goal, but 3-0, they more than deserved to be 3-0 up. And it wasn't just the goals, was it, Ayub? The performance,
Mm.
free-flowing. They did something very interesting tactically, which I'm sure you saw. They've started to play Rice a bit deeper, and they played him against Atletico Madrid a bit deeper to give them that kind of last line of defense. It's a bit as though it's a bit like kind of in baseball, the last innings where you bring in your main pitcher just to kind of shut out an innings. It's a bit like the last games of the season now. Arteta's thinking along the lines of, I just need to be solid. If I'm solid, we've got a good chance to win these games. And Declan Rice is as good as anybody, in my humble opinion, at that number 6 position, because his instincts are to defend you, and that's critical, I think, for a footballer. You've then got two of the best, I would argue, the two best centre backs in the league right now, in Gabriel and Saliba. So you've got all of that, and I think he's just thought, let me just reinforce that from a guy who his number one quality is his strength, power, athleticism, which is what you need. You need legs in these final games of the season to get you over the line. And I thought what was really interesting with the introduction of Miles Lewis-Skelly is that instead of that kind of box formation that they often play where Zubimendi and Rice, or let's say a double pivot, you often saw kind of Miles Lewis-Skelly and Rice play split off one another. So they were constantly taking turns to drop into that centre-back position. And that caught Fulham, I thought, a little bit off guard. They were not sure, like, okay, do we press Rice? But then Miles Lewis-Skelly drops into that middle. He's got a wonderful low centre of gravity. He wriggles out of situations, high risk, high reward. But there were so many times where he dropped into the middle of the centre backs and then Rice would drift off. So they were able to kind of spring out of that back area with a lot more, let's say, attacking potency than what they have been previously, where Zubimendi and Rice would be more, let's say, square to one another. So I thought that was a really interesting development. I think it's a huge moment for Miles Lewis-Skelly mind. He trusted him in the middle of the park in a critical game, Ayub, and he absolutely shone. Now, this is his position. He's 19 years of age. So although he's had a trying season, difficult season, he's 19 years of age. And he played in the middle of a park in a critical game in the Premier League when your team's going for the Premier League title for the first time in 22 years. You cannot imagine, I think he was told that he started quite late. Maybe that was by design. But you can't imagine the pressure that a 19-year-old would feel under those circumstances. And you might argue, well, he's young, so he's probably just free of all kind of risks and worry. But I think it can work both ways. He's a fan as well, so that's always adds a little bit of a layer of kind of, let's say, pressure, so to speak. Where he was wonderful, wasn't he? I think that will give Arteta real food for thought in terms of this is his position. He came through the ranks playing this position. He looked wonderfully adept and calm as an influence on the game itself, and he did not look out of place at all, Ayub. So moving forward, he might look at him not just in terms of Tuesday night, where I think he will start, by the way. I think he'll look at it like moving forward to say, could he give me valuable minutes next season? Should I consider him as more of a central midfielder? And you can think at the age of 19, full of beans, full of legs, all the rest of it. So I just thought Arsenal were really good, Ayub, offensively really good. Gyökeres had his best game. You saw how they were playing kind of into his feet, letting him run the channels a little bit more. He gave Anderson and Bassey all types of bother. Another interesting little wrinkle, I think, Ayub, I don't know if you agree, is Odegaard tends to play more towards the right-hand side with Saka. Now, that normally means a lot of the pitch is lent or leans itself towards Saka, which means he's often doubled up because players obviously get attracted to other bodies. Whereas Eze, he's much more disciplined and stays in that middle of the park. He's quite languid in his style, but he tends to stay in the middle of the park, which then means Saka gets so many different one-on-one looks. And one-on-one is one of the best, if not the best, in the league, if you ask me. So I think that little change in terms of where Odegaard likes to play close to Saka and Eze, who likes to play a bit more central, freed up space for Saka. And look, I just thought it was a wonderful performance. A really nice watch for the first time in a long time. Attacking verve, movement, in behind, which is critical. You've got to get in behind, cutbacks, causing all types of bother. Crowd was into it. Players were engaged. It felt like a real... They played like Premier League champions, Ayub. That's how it felt. It was the first time I looked at them and thought they're playing like a team worthy of winning the Premier League title in terms of that kind of defensive structure and discipline, where Saliba right now is just absolutely immense, but also showing a great deal of attacking verve. So incredible performance. Just very quickly onto today's game, Ayub. You're right. It's a bit of pressure on City, 6 points behind, 4 goals behind in terms of goal difference as well. Arsenal had opportunities in the second half, Ayub. I don't know if you saw the Leno save off the back of his head. Very lucky, very fortunate. Every goal matters at this stage. But City, I think, will be calm. I don't think they're the kind of team who just starts panicking by any stretch. It is a difficult place to go. Everton are not a pushover. It's a David Moyes team, so I don't expect them to just simply lay over and what have you. But I would expect City to win because I just think they've got too much attacking nous. They've not played in a little while, are you? They rotated quite heavily against Southampton, so some of those players will be either fresh or lacking a little bit of
Mm.
rhythm. Pick your poison. But I think it is the kind of game that could become troublesome. Gary Neville, I guess, made a good point that it's at this stage of the season where an early penalty, a red card, a VAR decision, something could just change the outlook of this Premier League title race completely. I was reminded again about the Gabriel quote unquote headbutt against Haaland and how crucial that could be.
Mm.
Because think about the
Yeah.
games Gabriel's played: clean sheet against Newcastle, clean sheet against Fulham, and these all go into the mixer, don't they? So I think from a City perspective, they'll be calm. They've won the title before. They've got some champions. You mentioned Bernardo Silva, Rodri, Haaland, just to name a few. Obviously, the manager's a perennial winner anyway. So I think they'll be quite calm and quite relaxed. And they'll still believe, Ayub, we win our 5 games, we'll win the league. Arsenal will also believe if we win our remaining 3 games,
Mm.
we'll win the league. So also play for, I think it is a tricky game, but I do expect them to navigate it with a certain level of class. And I think they'll probably turn them over, maybe 2-0 or something along those lines. Do you think, are you just very quickly on today's game, but do you think also that Man City, as well as even Arsenal now, will slowly start to think, right, goal difference? You saw a little bit of it from Arsenal, but they've got this slight issue of the midweek game, so they had to kind of rest and rotate, which is fair enough. I don't begrudge Arteta that difficult decision. But do you think now, if City are, let's say, 2-0 ahead at half time, they'll be thinking, right, let's try and pump them 3-0, 4-0.
I mean, that is the key point. It's whether you're leading. I think they'll certainly feel a little bit of pressure because I think Arsenal, what will be worrying for City is that it was an imperious performance against a poor Fulham side. I must confess that was
Yeah.
a very poor sort of performance. But in part, you've got to give credit to Arsenal. But I think Arsenal are looking very confident. The 3 goals that they've scored, again, it gives them quite a bit of advantage in terms of the goal difference. But I think when you're 6 points behind, I mean, Man City can't afford to make any mistakes. And you just talked about a rash challenge, a red card, something like that. So they're experienced enough. This is not their first rodeo, so they've been here before. But there is a degree of pressure, and this is where you want players to embrace this, to almost enjoy sort of being in this position. I think their objective will be just to win the game. I think if they're 2 up at halftime, then it becomes a conversation about, right, is there a chance just to boost our goal difference? But I think at the start of the game, it's just about getting 3 points, because the last thing that they will want to do is concede any ground on Arsenal, because I think that will be fatal if they don't get maximum points. Because I am absolutely convinced. I say absolutely convinced. The only game that I'm worried about is Arsenal versus West Ham, or West Ham versus Arsenal. That's the only game where there is so much at stake for West Ham. And obviously there's a huge amount of pressure, and Arsenal are notorious for sort of bottling it, for want of a better phrase. So maybe that could be a game where perhaps West Ham might just throw the kitchen sink. And there's a at the London Stadium, I mean, the West Ham fans can get quite boisterous, and if they start well and if they score early, it could just make Arsenal a little bit on the back foot, a little bit panicky. So that's the game that I'm worried about, for 2 reasons. Obviously, the main reason is I want it to be an Arsenal victory or a draw at worst. But it's set up beautifully. I think today I do expect Man City to win.
Yeah.
But I'm intrigued to find out how they approach the game, because certainly from a neutral's perspective, it looks as if there's a great deal of pressure on Man City now, because they can't afford to make a mistake. So I'm intrigued to find out how they approach the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if it was the other way around, if City was 6 points ahead now with a goal difference of, let's say, +4 compared to Arsenal, and Arsenal were going into a Monday night game away to Everton, you would imagine the kind of pressure would be even louder. You're going away from home. I mean, people thought Arsenal at home to Fulham would be difficult. I know Fulham had a virus in their squad across the week, but you could imagine some of the narrative right now. You sense this would be an Arsenal slip up right now. Monday night, 6 points behind. Got to try and find some goals as well. Maybe not in this game, but the pressure's there. The mental pressure is there that actually even a win doesn't actually put us in a sense closer. We've got to try and find a game or two to boost the goal difference. Now, City will look at it and see. I don't think today. You're right. Today's a win-only game from a lens of right. If you were to earmark the games, you'd say right. Oh, wait a Goodison, can we just get 3 points? It was the same for me. If you remember, home to Newcastle, home to Fulham, I said to you, these are just win at all cost type games. West Ham falls into that bracket. I don't think that game at any stretch, unless there's a red card, some early situation where you say, right, guys, we've got to really pile it on now because the win's in the bag. I think West Ham's also, if we win by a goal, great, just get out of there. Because West Ham are absolutely fighting for their lives. They obviously feel a bit wronged with the events at Villa Park yesterday a little bit as well. So they'll be absolutely fighting for their lives, as will Arsenal, obviously. But then they've got that Burnley at home game, and if they beat Atletico Madrid Tuesday night, which is the biggest night, I would argue, at the Emirates since its inception. You could make the argument. And then you've got, obviously, weekend at West Ham. They don't leave London for the rest of the Premier League season. And also, obviously, this home leg against Atletico Madrid. Arsenal would then look upon it and say, if we can win Atletico Madrid and we can win West Ham, we're nearly there. Because they'll feel like Burnley at home. I mean, Gary Neville was pointing to your victory, Leeds' victory against Burnley. And he said, I mean, they look done. So, I mean, Arsenal have got to be feeling confident about putting a few. But these games are weird sometimes. Weird things can happen. So
not against Burnley.
Maybe not. Listen, I'd be massively disappointed. You've got to win that game. And like you said, you've got to win it well. They're a relegated team. They're poor for a reason. And Arsenal should be able to find major gaps. But I think from a City perspective, they'll look upon games like even home to Brentford. I know Brentford are okay right now and scoring a few goals, but it's at home. They've got Palace at home. They've got Villa at home. Palace, you saw what they put forward over the weekend. They've obviously got their eye a little bit on the Conference League. Villa, we saw what the team that they put out. You can imagine what they'll feel like if they do make it to Europa League. They play City at the last end. I mean, you could see a scenario where City pump one or two of these teams, especially at home. So I think from an Arsenal perspective, you think about situations like the Gyökeres misplaced pass last week. You think about when the ball came off Leno's head. He was nowhere near it. I don't know if you saw it, but he was absolutely nowhere near it. It's going in, hits the top of his head, of his scalp, and just ends up hitting the bar by chance. Can you imagine if Arsenal lose the title by 1 goal? So it's incredibly well poised. I think from an Arsenal perspective, job done so far. They've got a huge game. The next 2 weeks, every game's a huge game, but Tuesday night should be incredible, Ayub, at home to Atletico Madrid. But then you've got West Ham. I just think the Premier League title is there. Most people believe, Ayub, that both teams will win out. Just very quickly, do you see both teams winning out?
I hope so. I hope so. Purely for the reason where if Arsenal do win all their remaining games, it means we're definitely staying up. So, but I think yes, I do. I think that is the. I mean, I talk about the West Ham game. That probably is the trickiest fixture that you have because there's so much at stake. It is an away game, albeit it's a London game. It's a London derby. The fans will be up for it. But it's been a wonderful season. And I think the climax is just sensational. I mean, I'm still nervous. Even I mean, I keep on against Burnley. I thought if we win, that's it. That's us safe. But no, it's not the case. But it's a terrific season. It will go down to the last game. And I've got a feeling it will go down to goal difference at the top end. And what a way. Whoever sort of wins it, I think the losers will be absolutely devastated. But it's as a football fan, it's just been sensational. So on that note, I think we should call it a day. So as always, thank you so much for your time. Enjoyed it as always. And until the next time, I'll see you soon. So see you later, lads.